right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show. You one-stop shop for all things Commanders. Let's see, our favorite photog Abdullah Khanti is back today. We had a great time looking at his pictures last time. We're pumped to have you back, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you guys so much for having me. Always love joining.
Yeah, we got great response from that last time. George, let's hop right into it. It's been a really weird year. I think maybe we've talked about this before, obviously, but it feels like because there was so much momentum from last season that when the wheels fell off this thing so quickly that it was, I think it blindsided so many people. I'm sure the staff included that it was hard to wrap your head around what's going on. And when quarterbacks like Caleb Williams and Drake May, who didn't have the greatest seasons last year when Caleb did, are having those big prolific seasons this year and kind of showing you why they were drafted at 1-3. I think it hurts even harder, a little more maybe for Commanders fans. Fact is, George, the quarterback, Jaden Daniels, hasn't missed any games. I mean, what he missed 2 last year, and then of course what happened this year. But the notion that all of a sudden he's injury prone, I know the big deal before with the draft was the big hits he took, but those didn't generally sideline him. I mean, the hits that he took last year were ribs. This year really is the elbow. What do you make of the people that are worried now that Jaden Daniels is injury prone?
I think you have to look at it both ways, both like long game and the short game. I think it's fair to assess that Jaden Daniels has been injury prone this year, in my personal opinion, because there has been, he was injured 3 separate occasions on 3 different types of injuries. So, and he hasn't completed a game. Like the last 3 times he entered the game, he's left on the case of an injury, right? Is that going to be his long-term projection? Is that going to be what he's going to be moving forward? We have no idea, right? It's something we do have to kind of consider and think about. But I do think, if you are reflective, if you are being objective, you do want your quarterback to play. And I believe Jaden didn't play consecutive games almost all season, except for week 1 and 2 at the beginning of the year. I think that derailed the season more than anything else because, he is our superstar. He's the one that carries our team, and he covers a lot of warts that we have on our team, like our receiving core and our running back. So I do think he can elevate everyone else, and him being out exposed the lack of depth on our team. The one thing I do want to say, though, because I'm thinking about it, and I might write an article about it, is that this quarterback class is fantastic, right? Like going back to 2004, we saw Eli Manning and Big Ben. We saw Phillip Rivers. Going back to 83, we saw Elway and Marino. And I forget the last one. Jim Kelly was the last one back in 83. This group can be very, very good, right? We have, I think Caleb Williams is a strong quarterback. I think Drake May is a strong quarterback. I think Bo Nix is a decent quarterback in a great situation with Sean Payton who could elevate him. So I think this is going to be a 10-year journey. I think there's going to be some years where Jaden Daniels really thrives. Some years Caleb Williams thrives. It's going to be up and down. It's going to be more of a marathon than 1 year. So I wouldn't be like, I know you guys are talking off air. It's really bad to snap judge just this season because it's not just, it's the long game. We have a rookie contract for 5 years. That's where Jaden Daniels is going to be. So I guess to answer your question, I'm not going to label him as injury prone, but there are questions going into next year, if that makes any sense, right? Like he has to prove they can play for 17 games. That could also produce like it did last year. We had one great year, one, disappointing year. Now we got to wait till next year to kind of see what he truly is on the pro level.
Abdullah, was it unfair of the front office to, George mentioned it, we hear it all the time, Jaden's our superstar, he elevates everybody else around him. Did they put too much stock into the fact that he did that last year and use that as a reason why not to upgrade the roster more?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think for sure that they know that he's a superstar, or at least that's what they believed, and we all believed after season 1. And I think them going and making the trade for Tunsil, even the halfway to season trade for Lattimore with Debo, they did some big moves thinking like, hey, we could take that chance right now. And it just didn't work out for one reason or another with the injuries. Marshawn didn't really play to his form. Debo played well at the beginning of the year. Tunsil's played well also. It's just hasn't been the team hasn't been healthy enough. It's not just him. I mean, this is the most injured team in the whole league. Now, I think the biggest complaint you can make about the roster building is that they just went and got a lot of older guys. And I think more people were expecting a bigger splash in free agency, which just did not occur. I remember that first day of free agency, seeing all the people just kind of going to different teams, and it's kind of like, what are they kind of doing? They went with the whole, we're going to take a bunch of guys on 1-year deals like they did the first year, like Jaden, how it worked out the first year and didn't work out the second year. I think AP can get the same level of flack for the moves he made in year one with these year deals with Jins, the Kias, that worked out. Dante Fowler didn't really work out so well when it comes to, people like Will Harris, when it comes to certain, they pulled Austin Eckler back for a year. Like, some of these just didn't work out. And it's not that, he just didn't take a lot of chances on guys. And I think we're going to expect a bigger swing with free agency this year. I do want to make a comment about the Jaden thing. And I think the one thing that I saw from Jaden's play this year is that I think it's fair to say that Jaden is injury prone for this year. I think the bigger complaint, if anybody wants to complain about anything, is that, look, we've seen him take big hits in college. We've seen him take big hits this year. He probably just needs to learn how to avoid some of these bigger hits. But outside of that, I just think it's a little unfair to already categorize his career as an injury-prone career. People are just so impatient to see people develop. We see people wanting to bash Luke McCaffrey after 1 year, and then this year they're like, hey, we like Luke McCaffrey, so let's give it some time. That's my biggest thing to the fan base.
Absolutely. Can I jump in real quick, Doug, and say one thing? I agree 100%. I think Jaden Daniels, his story is yet to be written. I think one thing that I really want to supplement, and we talked about Abdullah, like surrounding him with talent, right? I think Jaden Daniels has the offensive talent. I think he can do very, very well. I think in order for him to be successful long term is to kind of build a run game around him. We're going to talk about that with our free agents coming up. Like, I think having a run game, like we see that with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, we see it with Kyle Monangai and DeAndre Swift with Caleb Williams. Yeah, like there has to be times where Jaden Daniels doesn't have to put everything on his shoulder. Like the thing that resonated with me the most, and Abdullah, you were right on the field when this happened, the Seattle game. I just felt like Jaden had to be Superman in that Seattle game because he felt like he was like, it was a one look, there was no one open, so he had to take off and run. He has that ability in his back pocket, but that shouldn't be relied upon. Like the argument that I see on Twitter all the time is, hey, Jaden can elevate players, so therefore we don't need to surround him with talent. I think that's the absolute wrong way to look at it, right? I think because he's so good, you want to be able to let him take everyone to the next level, right? Like give him an offensive line, give him a run game, give him some good wide receivers to really take one more level.
Well, that's also like the argument that people mostly have for veteran quarterbacks, right? Because you're like, okay, a guy's been playing for 6 years, he knows exactly what to do. He's turned into that point guard, and we just get all the guys around him. He's still in his second year, like he's still developing, so it makes sense to get guys that are going to come and make his job easier, which is why I think Doug was talking about getting the kid from Notre Dame, Jeremiah Love, and how people knocked the Gibbs thing, which I was one of those people. I laughed when Detroit drafted Gibbs at that time, but now I'm kind of like, yo, look, I understand some people are like defense. I agree that I would attack defense heavily. But if you can handle getting some players on the defensive side of the ball, getting somebody like Love would be huge, because you do need people that are going to make this guy's life easier. And we just, with the whole Terry debacle with the signing, and they just didn't get on the page. They brought Debo, I think, to help out, but he just couldn't do it by himself without Terry being there. I think they are efforting that. I think they just need to do a better job of that, because he's still learning. He's still young. He's still learning. They need to take advantage of his rookie window, not only from the salary cap perspective, but also from the fact that he's still learning how to play the game at an NFL level.
Absolutely.
George, if they brought back the same offensive line next year, is that good enough for you? I mean, they spent a lot of resources on that. I'm thinking about, we'll get to some of the other free agents later, but in particular, I'm thinking about Paul and how much these guards kind of go for now. If they'll want to invest that much money when you're getting ready to give Tunsil a big bag of money. And is there an upgrade available for Biotis, or is he good enough?
Yeah, so that's a great point. So first of all, shout out to Dev from the Command This podcast. I definitely see what you're going over there. Eckler was a great running back to start the year. I agree with that, and built out 1,000 yards, or close to 1,000 yards, so for sure. To answer your question, Doug, I like the offensive line. I think the offensive line is one of our strengths. I think that's why I think the offense isn't too far away. Like I think our offensive line is pretty strong. Our left guard, we have, Chris Paul is a potential free agent. We could re-sign him, and I think they're going to make an attempt to. Like we'll see how expensive he becomes. But people forget we have Brennan Coleman that's sitting there in our bench. He's still under a rookie contract. We can slide him over there. Andrew Wiley, I'm not sure if he's a free agent this year, but he might still be under contract as well. So you can move him over to guard. We do have options on the team. And getting a guard is a prime spot in the third, fourth round. You can get those players at that point over there. You can still build that up. So I think the offensive line is a pretty solid foundation. And I think that's one thing that Adam Peters did well. People criticize, hey, his free agents were a miss and yada, 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 and so on and so forth. But he added Laramie Tunsil, who's an all-pro left tackle. He added Connolly, who I think's on the rise. People talking about people being short-lived. People were really tough on Connolly at the beginning of the year, saying he was a bust after like week 3. And he ended up being a pretty damn good player. I think I've always liked Connolly. I think he's going to be great moving forward. So the offensive line's in a good spot. Going back to what Dev was saying, their run game is solid. I think losing Eckler was a huge piece. Like he was our best pass blocking running back, our best receiving running back. They lost him. So I think that's a big miss. But I think Bill's a good player, but I would still like to add to that position. Like Jeremiah Love, I'm not opposed to that at all. But I think we have multiple needs. Like Love's a huge need. Yeah, we need a wide receiver as well.
Everything.
We need an edge play. We need a lot of players.
Yeah, that means a lot. Yeah.
Like in a dream scenario, it's not going to happen. In a dream scenario, you could trade back, still get Love, maybe get Love at like 10 or 11, and then get like Makai Lemon like in the 20s. There's like another wide receiver there. That'd be a stacked, complete uplift for the offense. That's what we truly need. But I'm not worried about our offense.
The Chiefs are going to draft like 1 or 2 picks behind us and take Love. You know that.
That's
they're set up. They're set up to take that.
They should. It makes the most sense for them too. Like I think if you think about what team, it's a match made in heaven. Love to Kansas City makes the most sense. I want to add, he's insane. I want to add the fact that when it comes to the Connolly thing specifically, like we talked about, people don't want to give people patience and time. The guy went up against Brian Burns and
Max Crosby
against
Dual Carter
and Michael Parsons in the first 3 games.
Brian Burns.
That's the thing. People want to just immediately bash. And I think that like for us I've knocked AP a little bit this year because I just felt like he could have done more in the offseason, but maybe he is still playing it a little bit because when you think about it, especially from the offensive side, like you said, the offense isn't that far behind because the O-line is so in like key for this team to have success, and they really did a good job of solidifying that. The only person that I've been a little bit unsure what happened there was the Coleman situation because he thought it was just going to be an automatic. He goes to guard, everything's going to work out. There was like a 4-game week window where he was just scratched, like healthy scratches. But outside of that gives people more confidence, I think, moving forward, knowing that they have a quarterback and they have an O-line to fall back on.
Doug, let me ask you a question because I know you've been asking us some. So I'm going to throw you one. So people have criticized Adam Peters for not being aggressive enough. Let's be a devil's advocate here. He traded for Laramie Tunsil. He traded for Marshawn Lattimore. He traded for Deebo Samuel. And even Jaden Daniels is a higher upside pick. And he could have taken Drake May, who was like the higher rated high school prospect going into the draft. Is it unfair to say that he wasn't aggressive enough in your opinion? Or are you of that mindset where, hey, you should have spent more, should have went after it more?
Well, I'd suggest that when they drafted Jaden Daniels, he had the higher floor. I think people argued that Drake May maybe had the higher ceiling. And I think he has gone higher ceiling as far as the picks go. Like people told us all the time, right, about the right tackle that when they drafted him, that was definitely a for the future move. Whatever they got out of him this year would be great. But that everybody kind of felt if he'd have gone back to college another year and had that same kind of production, he'd have been a top 10 pick. So I think when they were able to get him down there at that bottom, what was it, 28?
29,
29, they thought, I really think he thought they were stealing. And I think he was right. Now we can talk about some of the other picks from the year before and whether he drafted them too high and whether they'll pan out. Did Senate, did they get enough work from Senate to make you comfortable going in with
Not
him next
me.
year?
Not
Did
me.
Johnny
Not me
Newton do
either.
enough in the game that they gave him?
He's interesting, but I wouldn't depend on him for 17 games. The guy, like he's an unknown to me.
Right.
That's what I'm not trying to say he's bad,
Now
but he's an unknown. That's what
now
I'm
Are you
now
talking about Sinnott still, or are you talking about
Sinnott.
Newton? And okay, got it. Yeah.
yeah,
Sinnott,
wait, I
yeah.
mean, I put him in the same class with Johnny Newton, right? I mean, both those guys we needed to see something from, and for whatever reason, they didn't think it was important as the fan base to get those guys out there and take a good look at them. Now I know they get to see them in practice, but that's not quite the same as going on game day. Now the other ones, George, I'm fine with that, right? Like, I mean, being able to get Tunsil is about as close to getting Trent Williams back as this organization can do. And I think, and frankly, he's what 8 years younger than Trent Williams at this point. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm happy with that move. I'm willing to give up those draft picks for it because you just don't get left tackles like that. So I
Mhm.
was fine with that. Marshawn Lattimore, I thought was interesting. If that works out, then AP's a genius, right? It didn't work out for a number of different reasons that we've talked about ad nauseum here. So I won't go into that, but it obviously didn't work. And as far as Debo Samuels, and I guess we can just move right into the free agency stuff that we have coming up here on the show. He was over 1,000 yards all purpose, right? Like to me, when Debo wanted out of San Francisco, and I say this all the time, it was because he wanted to be a real wide receiver, if you will. He didn't want to be gadget guy number one. He wanted to go out there and run routes.
Mhm.
And whether it was because Noah Brown only caught one pass all year because he only played 3 snaps in one game, or if it was because Terry's slow start and his injuries that he had to get back from. But they had Debo out there running big boy wide receiver routes. And I thought he looked the part myself. I mean, you talk about almost 800 receiving yards this year. He still got juice. I think the other day when he hit that big run, they had him at like just under 20 miles per hour. I'll take that. We can talk about whether he's worth the money or what he might be looking for next year. But as far as giving up a 5th-round pick for Debo Samuels, again, I think
Yeah.
Adam Peters is stealing.
I thought it was a good deal. And I think with Debo Samuel, if he gets 8 more catches, I don't know if you guys both saw the stat yet. 8 more catches will be his career high, like he's ever had
That's
throughout
crazy.
the
I didn't know
league,
that.
which should be pretty impressive. The one knock is that I think he had like it might have been 14 or 17 yards per catch while he was back at San Francisco. It's dropped down to 10 around here because there's a lot of screens, kind of short passes here. But I think Debo Samuels has, for a 5th-round pick, I thought it was a steal. His contract was like 17 million too. Sorry, I'll jump in a second.
Oh no, yeah, go ahead.
It was about 17 million, so I don't think it was like that big of a financial investment either. And so, I mean, that wasn't that bad at all. And I thought he earned a lot of money this Cowboys game. I thought he was kind of on the fence, like, hey, like, are we going to potentially bring him back? But I think he really probably had maybe arguably his best game for Washington this last week. So he might come back next year, and I think it might be an option. But what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, like you said, before this game, I think he was on the fence. I think people had seen like the drop in Minnesota, like, the weird drop he had in Kansas City. And there were some people who were kind of like, is he worth it? But when you really look at the fact that he was kind of on his own this year trying to make things work, and he's not really a player that I think strives when he's just the number one. I think he's a better number 2 because he can do the gadget stuff, and I think that would have helped his catches, yards per catch as well, if he was able to do more catching the ball and running and stuff like that, and maybe some more downhill threats. I would say in preseason, he was, when we were at training camp, he looked incredible. And at that point, there was, more wide receivers to be paired with him. I think he had it was an interesting year for him, but when you look at the stats, he had a pretty good year. And I think this last game kind of proved, with Terry being back, being able to get more, one-on-one kind of situations. I think there's reasons for them to bring him back. Now, the biggest thing is, what kind of deal will they be able to get? Like, you bring up the numbers here, and that's my biggest concern. I don't know if, we do know that Adam Peters likes to get good deals. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. What we saw from the Terry thing was that he's not going to pay extra just because he likes the guy. So, I know they have a good relationship, but are they going to be able to bring him back with that with the money that they want to spend for a premium type player, especially not to, we don't know what's going on with IU situation, but that could be another wrinkle in this whole decision-making situation next year if he does become available. So
I know you wrote about first of all, tell us about your new writing gig, George. I saw that the other day.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I kind of lucked out. So, as you guys know, as Doug definitely knows, I'm a University of Maryland guy,
Yeah.
and it was kind of cool. There's a startup by a bunch of former journalism majors at Maryland, and there actually are current interns at the Maryland program that are for journalism that are right there. They're starting a startup called Roundtable as part of the Commanders Network, and they're like, "Hey, George, you want to jump on and start writing some articles? I know you got some pretty good content." I'm like, cool, why not? I'll give it a whirl. I haven't written in a couple of years. Like Doug knows me and Doug. Like I was a writer before I became a podcast. Yeah. Ironically, I was actually shy to get on camera and be on to be on here. And Doug was like, "Come on, man, you gotta do it." And I kind of focused a lot of my energy on that. But it's kind of cool. It's kind of fun to get back into writing. And I wrote about the Ayuk article, so definitely check that out on Roundtable. And Doug, you're more than welcome to contribute. And we'll talk about that offline. But it's real cool. That's cool. But,
give us a little taste of what's in there. What do you think about Ayuk?
Yes, I kind of broke everything down and kind of looked at his his big picture, and like, dude, when he was healthy, Brandon Ayuk was elite, right? He basically, I think he averaged, I don't have the stats on top of my head, but it was like 68 catches per year, 1,000 yards per year, 7 touchdowns a year for 4 straight years, coming right out of college. And it was fantastic, right? Like, he produced very, very well. But the concern is that he hasn't played in a year and a half. His last game was in October 2024. There has been some off the field incidents because of this whole suspension leave list they put him on. He's not even allowed to practice and work out at the actual facilities. So he's not actually doing any NFL reps or film work or anything like that. He's removed from the NFL, which is kind of a concern for me. One thing that I did highlight that I found while doing my research was Odell Beckham. Like in 2023, he was what's up, Chris? He basically was he was suspended for 1 year in 20, or he was out of the league for 2022. I forget what happened with him, but he came back and he signed a 1-year deal for $15 million to join the Ravens, and he produced pretty well. And I was like, you know what? For something like that, like for me, I don't know how you guys feel. I hate trading assets. I hate trading picks, but paying money for free agency, I don't care about that at all. Like, I think you can bend the salary cap. You can don't be crazy with it, but you can definitely take some chances with free agency. And I wouldn't mind it for a 1-year, $15 million deal, $17 million deal because of inflation or something. My thing with him and what I said in the article is I don't want him to be the solution. I don't want us to be like, hey, we got Brandon Ayuk. He's our wide receiver too. Let's walk into next year with that.
Noah Brown.
That's absolutely that's not what I want at all. I take him as a wide receiver 3-ish. If that's what I was going
with. Especially with I hate to go down this route, but we have to we're not sure where he is mentally, right? Like, I mean, one of the things that I know that a guy that I watch a lot, Rio Robinson, has talked about was that we haven't seen him do anything. Usually these guys are out there warming up, or they're warming up with their team. Since he's been MIA with his team, usually people put out videos of them training, all of that. We just haven't seen it, so we have to question where his mental state is. And so I think, like you said, I think the fact that you wouldn't have to trade for him is the main reason why it's very, very enticing. But outside of that, I mean, you shouldn't be sitting there like, we got Ayuk, we're good at receiver. I definitely think you really need to consider other people as well.
And
go ahead, George.
Let me say one last thing. One last thing that's kind of like a misnomer from our fan base. Yes, he's good friends with Jaden Daniels, and they have potentially a good relationship. I think Jaden Daniels kind of like, he's effusive and becomes friends with everybody. He's friends with Malik Neighbors and people like that. They only played together 1 year. They only played 2019 together, this one season. People act like they've been like best friends for 20 years. They've been playing for years and years. It was one season together. But I will say, Jay Daniels had 17 touchdown passes that 1 year, and 8 of them went to Brandon Ayuk. So there is a relationship there, but at the same time, how deep is it?
Before, I wanted to follow up on something we had talked about earlier before we get to this free agent list, and that's the willingness that the fan base has used the injuries to kind of sweep away this season. And I'm just curious, your guys' thoughts. It's so easy to talk about those injuries, and yet the San Francisco 49ers, we're like, oh, we lost Dietrich Wise, and they're like, well, yeah, we lost Nick Bosa, and then we're like, oh, well, we lost this guy, and they're like, yeah, well, we lost Fred Warner. Like, they basically lost more starting snaps this year than we did, and they're a week away from being one of the top seeds in the NFC. So I'm just curious, where does the rubber meet the road on the injuries, and why some teams are able to get by them and some teams can't, like this one.
I can answer, but if you want to go first, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I mean, coaching matters, right? Like, I mean, I think that we've
Yeah.
criticized the three people who need the most criticism this year are Jaden Daniels, which we talked about. And we're not bashing him too hard, but we had to criticize him and his ability to maybe avoid taking hits. We talked about AP and like, did he do the best job when it comes to roster building? And then the last thing for me is Dan Quinn. I think I'm a fan of Dan Quinn. I love his energy, love what he's about. But there is an element of like, yeah, are they coaching up these guys to be ready for when, the next play? I mean, when anybody who's played football, they know that their coaches always talk to the people who aren't starting. They're like, hey, you're one play away. Like, stay locked in, stay ready. You're one play away from being the main guy. And there's a lot of injuries that teams have had, but for this team, it's like they couldn't do anything once some of these guys were injured. And that concerns me because this is the NFL, this is football. Like, people get injured. You have to have backup plans. You have to have ideas of what you're going to do if you're forced to go left or right. So that would be my biggest thing, is that I feel like this is where you can criticize the coaching a little bit, because they just look like a defeated team in some of these games after the first quarter. And, all these guys are making NFL money, so they should be, really locked in. So, I mean, granted, they, like we said at the beginning, they've had the most injuries of any team out there. So people can compare injuries here or there. They've really suffered from it, and they weren't the best roster in the league. I think Jaden covered a lot of that. As we saw, he's played Superman last year. He tried to do it again this year. It didn't really work out. But I do think we have to question coaching just a little bit.
And what I was going to say is, in addition to coaching, continuity matters, right? San Francisco has had the same GM and the same coach for a very, very long time with a clear-cut system. They've layered their depth and their draft and their free agency for years and years and years. They're a much deeper team than we ever were, right? So I think at a surface level, you can look at the injuries for the 49ers and the Commanders, but hey, they were somewhat comparable, or maybe even worse for the 49ers. But, as Abdullah kind of alluded to, Kyle Shanahan is arguably top 3 coach, offensive coach in the entire league, right? He knows clearly what he wants. He knows there's a zone stretch scheme. He's in the outside zone. It's going to be what he's going to implement for his offense. He has Christian McCaffrey, who's already one of the top 5 running backs in the league too, and can kind of lean on that. Mac Jones was a good pickup, a former first-round pick as a backup quarterback, and they say to float in regard to that. So, having multiple years of the same GM, same coach, multiple drafts under that same regime, not an overturn like we had, not the misses that Rivera had. The team was deeper, and they had the ability to kind of work around it. So I think that's just something that we had. And then finally, just a lot of our games, the NFL's funny. The NFL there are clear talent gaps for certain teams, but for the most part, most of these players are pretty comparable. So it comes down to a couple plays here and there for every game. Even though Washington was clearly outmatched in a couple of the games, the Lions game, the Seahawks game, so on and so forth. But there are 3 other games we lost by a field goal and so on and so forth, right? Better coaching. If Jaden Daniels is there, we could have been a 7-10 team considering how bad this year was altogether. The 49ers, with those little forks in the roads, they did the right thing where the Commanders whiffed, and what Abdullah's kind of alluded to. So that coaching and that strategy went out the park, or maybe the 49ers have that in their back pocket and they were okay there, if that makes any sense.
Speaking of Dan Quinn, where does it bother you that Bobby Wagner's still playing because he's trying to hit records? And that's why we're not seeing McGee as much. Whereas Dan Quinn doing the right thing by Bobby by allowing him to hit those markers.
I think the records, man, I could be wrong, but I think the records are more like a fan construct. I think people are kind of leaning on that a little bit. I don't think Dan Quinn sits there and be damn, Bobby Wagner's 20 tackles away from the record. We got to put him in. I don't think it's like that. I think what I assume is that they're looking at Bobby Wagner. They're looking at Zach Ertz. They're looking at Marcus Mariota. They're looking at Josh Johnson. And they're like, yo, these guys, I've heard Zach Ertz, for instance, right? What John Bates said and Ben Sinnott said is they love Zach Ertz as a leader because every single day, whether they win, whether they lose, whether he had a great game or a bad game, he's like a robot. He's the exact same thing every single day. After every single practice, he walks out, does 100 jobs, he catches the ball every single time. He practices a certain way and so on and so forth. And I think that with a young, or I guess a developing program like Dan Quinn's trying to establish, he wants those leaders to be highlighted. So I think Bobby Wagner is the one that's leading the behind the scenes in the film room. I bet you Bobby Wagner is up there and kind of coaching and walking through and leading and going like that. So I think he's rewarding the coaches on the field and like that leadership component, that brother component, and that's kind of why he's dipping into it more than the stats, in my opinion.
Would you
Yeah.
be surprised if I told you that when Mitch Tischler was on here about a month ago, he
Mhm.
was emphatic that that's the reason that Bobby Wagner is still playing?
I mean, it makes complete sense to me. He's the
Mhm.
leader of that defense, and I know that like maybe his play isn't to where it was 5 years ago, or maybe even
Mhm.
not as good as it was last year. I think he makes a lot of plays, and I think that he is criticized. He's the guy in the middle, and look, some of these running backs are becoming very, very talented, and being able to keep up with them on third downs and stuff is becoming more of a difficult task. But I think that you take him off the field, there's a huge gap in leadership and getting people in the right places, in my opinion. And I think my biggest concern is that they need a backup. Like they need to start. I hope McGee is the guy who is learning from Bobby and is eventually going to take over the reins there. Whatever that plan is needs to be developed because he is just kind of at the end of the road. I think we can all see it and we all love Bobby, but I do think that for those who are saying just get him out of the game, I don't think the solution is that. I don't think the results would be better if he was out of the game. I do think that he plays. There's so many intangibles that go into football, and having that voice that you can rely on when you're out there. I mean, he's the quarterback of the defense. So, we've seen quarterbacks that stay in the league a lot longer because of the fact that like it is a tough position and you really need that leadership. I feel like he does the same thing for the defense, but I do think it's at that point where I wouldn't be surprised if Bobby's on this team next year. I think a lot of people already marking him as not going to be. I wouldn't be surprised because that leadership is something that you just don't get. But I do think they really need to establish some other younger guys, whether that's getting a Quay Walker in free agency or really developing Jordan McGee or maybe drafting another linebacker that they feel can take that role. But they really need to start, moving to that next phase of who's going to be leading that defense.
Well, we'll use that as a segue to this list, George. Would you be happy if Bobby Wagner was back here as the starting middle linebacker for the Commanders?
I think it's a hard answer. Honestly, I think I would be disappointed. Like, I
Yeah.
think Bobby Wagner, everything Abdullah said was correct, right? I think Bobby Wagner has those intangibles. He does produce, he does diagnose. He is great in the run game, but his deficits are in the passing game. He struggles in the passing coverage, right? And I think, as we see these awesome Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. There's no way most linebackers can cover those guys in open field, but Bobby Wagner, especially because he's a little bit older. I don't know. I could be wrong. I got to look at X's and O's and talk to people smarter than me. But I feel like Jordan McGee is more of a will linebacker as opposed to a middle linebacker. So I don't really know who's going to be the natural fit to replace Bobby Wagner. I wouldn't be mad at Bobby Wagner if he takes like a price cut and stays as a reserve and kind of plays in certain roles. But I just don't know if Bobby has that in him because I feel like he is prideful and he wants to play, and everybody wants to play when you're on the team, right? So I'm curious how that's going to go. But I think that the tape is out on him. It's a very copycat league. It's a very bloodthirsty league. And I think people, when they watch Bobby Wagner in the open field, they're like, hey, if we can get a running back on him, it's a clear disadvantage. So they attack that constantly. So I think if we don't address it, it's going to be an issue. I'm just curious about what we're going to do because this year we lacked everyone kind of played out of position this year, right? Like we had no pass rush, so therefore Frankie Luvu had to play more of like a 3-4 outside linebacker with blitzing off the edge, and therefore he couldn't really play in coverage. I'm not saying he's a great coverage linebacker, but he's known for kind of being like crazy and kind of covering a lot of field. So he played out of position, which kind of put Bobby out of position. It was messy. So we'll see how it goes next year. But I think I would like an upgrade. I think in this athletic league, you need an athletic linebacker, and I think that's what we need.
Abdullah mentioned Quay Walker. That's one of the guys I hope that they keep an eye on. Not a guy that necessarily I think is coming in to play middle linebacker, but a guy that would elevate that linebacker room significantly.
100%. And I think that like as a group, we talked about earlier, there's a lot of holes on this team. As much as like I want Jeremiah Love, I know that there's a lot of other positions that they need. There's a reason why Arvell Reese is my favorite player in the draft because of the fact that I feel like he can do a lot of things that they might need. But ultimately, yeah, like that question, who is playing middle linebacker? I don't know. That's the concern here because I like to answer your question. If I would want Bobby Wagner back, I would say yes, but like you said, I would be a little disappointed too because I think that there needs to be something that changes there, and it would be nice to have him more in a role where he's still kind of player coach playing maybe a little bit more of a limited role. But like even if that's the case, what kind of deal is that? who else do you bring in? Because there's not a ton of middle linebackers out in free agency either. So I think they're going to have a very difficult situation, which is why I think potentially they're going to just bring him back again. I think that might be the easy. We'll bring him back and try to figure it out next year and see what we can do if we can get other linebackers to come in and play with him versus just taking his spot over.
Let's go down the list. I'll kind of see what we guys
Von
think.
Miller might have like the quietest 9-sack season that anybody's ever had. When I saw that the other day, I think he's up to 9 now. I was stunned. I'm not saying that he'll be back next year. I'm not saying he'll want to be back next year. But I just thought it was interesting that he got to that number. Zach Ertz, I'm assuming, is not going to play again. I mean, that was a brutal injury at his age.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think Marcus Mariota is a top 2 or 3 backup quarterback in the league. So if he's willing to come back, certainly I'm in on that. I look at Austin Eckler. Are you okay, either one of you, if the running back room looks exactly the same next year as it does right now?
I wouldn't be. Yeah, I wouldn't be happy either.
Yeah, I want to improve it. People are really, I mean, more power to Chris Rodriguez. I thought he had it. Chris Rodriguez is a service, like everyone's a serviceable back. I thought Chris Rodriguez, with his opportunities out there, he falls forward, he gets 4 or 5 yards. There are some pretty explosive plays, but I don't think there's that high end, that high ceiling that we have there. Yeah. And I like Bill, and I think Bill, he has that explosiveness. I think Bill would best be served as a play the hot hand kind of running back, right? Like, maybe RB1A or RB2. I think he could balance off of that. What I want Bill to work on a lot this season is catching the ball. I want him to be more of a receiving back or of a pass protection back, because I can see him thriving there and doing really well there. But he is a little bit small. Like, I think I got crushed a little bit for it when I put a tweet up there. I said he doesn't really have a lot of running power, and people got upset with that. But I mean, he has power for his size, but I don't think he's necessarily a powerful in between the tackle type of running back.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why they got mad about that. He's not like B-Rob. He's not like C-Rod. Like, I don't, he's a great running back in ways, but power is not like the number one thing I would think of with him.
The problem was I did it live. I did it during the game, and he's hit a 70-yard rushing. Like, oh, look at you. What do you think now? I'll talk about that's where I got in trouble. But no, for fair analysis, he's a solid running back. But I think that's where
he put the juice on display on Christmas, though.
He can go, man. He has big play potential, which is why I like him more as a number 2 running back, not a number 1 running back. And I think that if they could pair him with somebody like K9 or Breece Hall or somebody, I mean, there's a lot of good running back free agents this year. So if they decided to go and get somebody, I'd be happy. I think if they just rolled with Bill again, I would be a little concerned, because I think that he needs a little bit of adjustment. I personally would want him to go with Luke McCaffrey and hang out with Bijan Robinson, because I know Luke and Bijan trained together last year, and Christian McCaffrey. Sneak on that plane with him and his luggage. I don't care. Get out there, hang out with those guys, get some practice in, get some reps in, learn how to catch the ball a little bit more, or figure out what those guys are doing, because I think Bill has a lot of potential. I love Bill. He went to my alma mater, so I connected with him on the sideline once, and he's a good guy, good kid. But I just think that it's either you go for a home run hitter that can play 3 every down, or if you're going to go with, hey, let's tackle defense outside of that, I think you get somebody who has a little bit more power that can complement him. And I think somebody like Kenneth Walker is perfect. Or you could go with somebody on the other end where you're like, hey, he might be more of the power guy, and we're going to get a guy like Kenneth Gainwell to come in and catch passes on the side too, which, some people have been mentioning. But I just think they need to add somebody. I think there's a little bit, when we talk about the struggles of Jaden, we can't ignore the fact that there wasn't a great running game for a lot of the games that he played in. I mean, they started off hot early on in the season when they were rolling, and then when things started falling apart, there was just no running game to be found. It's good to see that they're starting to get that running game back, but it'd be nice to add another guy to the mix.
It'll be interesting to see the offseason for Bill, because it's well documented that he sat out all of last year and wasn't able to play football. He was still in the meetings, but not able to play. If he could put on some size while keeping his speed this offseason, I think that will greatly help him in whatever role it is that they hope for him next. I think he can be a primary back still with the speed that he has. He just needs to get a little bit more experience on the NFL level, and I think he can be effective. It's interesting that we talked about the running game and how they didn't use it enough. And while I'll agree, what I do think is interesting, what I hope Cliff looks at this offseason is when, and maybe factually this isn't right, and it just is in my mind, but it felt like when Jaden plays, they didn't lean on the run game, right? Like they were throwing the ball all the time. And when Mariota comes in, they start running the ball, and you can understand why, but it gets everything going. I hope that next year they do the same thing running wise with Jaden that they did with Mariota, because all that can do is help him.
Yeah. More of a balance, man. Just needed.
Absolutely. I think best case scenario would be to add a free agent, to add an established free agent to kind of fill out the room, to kind of, if they had, like, for instance, Kenneth Walker, Bill, and Chris Rodriguez, that's a solid room. That's an awesome room to go into next year, right? So you have that little balance there. Either that, or, I guess worst case scenario, kind of like, not worst case, but an improvement is, you and I talk about it all the time, Doug, is you have to constantly draft running backs and wide receivers every single year. Just keep replenishing the pipeline, right? Like, you might get, like, Kamanunga, I believe, was a 6th round or 7th round pick as well, and he's having a great year too, right? So so is Bill, but if you get like a late round pick that maybe fills out the room a little bit better, you can balance it out that way. So maybe that is the approach that they do. But like I said, I would love it if there were some times in the NFL, you have to be multiple to win. There are some times where it's raining and it's pouring outside. You need to hand the ball off 20, 30 times. Like, do we have somebody that can do that? I don't know if we do right now. I just want to be multiple next year. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about B-Rob, every rain game they had last year or in prior years, B-Rob was huge. And that's like, he was born for like the slop or whatever they say, like when it comes to horse racing, right? Like he was able to be that guy that he rely on. And I agree with you, Doug. I don't think that they called great games for Jaden when it comes to running the ball. They just didn't run the ball enough. They, like, you look at the Minnesota game when they're on the 1 yard line and you were like, hey, run the ball. They do 3 straight passes and miss an opportunity. So I think it's because he's the best player on that offense. They want to give him the ball more, but it's a team game. And having that run game is extremely important. So I do think that that's something that they really need to focus on. There's a lot of things they need to focus on for next year, but definitely agree with you.
George, I know a lot of people want Cliff back. Is that a good thing?
I think so. I do. I think Cliff Kingsbury did a great job this year. I know people kind of are like, I think what happens is when you don't get the results that you want, people get really angry and they kind of have negative thoughts on everything, right? So, everyone's Michael Sanders is awful now. Connolly's horrible. Quan Martin, get rid of him. Cliff Kingsbury's trash. And Quinn's bad. They are all open to criticism, but I think it's a bad year. Sometimes shit happens. Sometimes we have injuries on the field. I think Cliff Kingsbury moved the ball with everything that he had. Like, when Jaden Daniels went out, we still moved the ball with Marcus Mariota. We still moved the ball with Josh Johnson. We still performed pretty well. And he was limited, right? We had Chris Rodriguez as a 6th round running back. We had Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt as a 7th round running back. We had a undrafted free agent rolling up in the season with Noah Brown as wide receiver 2, 36-year-old tight end of Zach Ertz. I mean, we didn't, like I'm saying.
We had Robbie Chosen against that Dallas game as their lead receiver, and he
Chris Moore for most of the season. I mean, it's like we didn't have the talent out there. And I think it's a very pivotal year for Jaden Daniels next year. Like, we already see Tavita Pritchard's gone, right? If Cliff Kingsbury's gone, he's going to take what's his name? The tight ends coach. I forget his name. It's not Stow. That's a quarterback.
David Blau? No, that's the quarterback coach, right?
Yeah, it's like Rye or Cy or something. Like, the tight ends coach is going to go with Kingsbury anyway. And what I'm trying to get at is, like, the most important thing for any quarterback is continuity. And I think if we have a slippery, like, God forbid, right? Cliff Kingsbury leaves, the tight ends coach leaves, Tavita Pritchard leaves, Marcus Mariota leaves, right? What's Jaden going to stand upon next year? He's a very talented player, but you want to have, secure, comfortable back, insulation to make sure you're good, successful for next year. So that's what I'm concerned about. I think Cliff Kingsbury, I would love to have just one more year with him. I think he's going to go to other places, but give me one more year with him. In my opinion.
Would they benefit from moving to like a Shanahan style offense?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the Shanahan style offense is the best in the NFL, but do we have the personnel for it, right? Do we have, like, I gotta look into that in detail. Like, I think Connerly is a kind of a move tackle. We can do that through screens and get on the edge with that. I guess
Is
Cosby
Mike, is
maybe
Mike
too.
McDaniels an upgrade as a play caller from Cliff Kingsbury?
Yeah, I'd say so for sure, but I don't think he's in. I think the Dolphins finished on a upswing, and
Yeah, I
he's
don't think
not
he
going to
gets
be
fired.
available.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think he gets fired. I
yeah,
was hoping. I was kind of like not hoping he did, but I was if Cliff was gonna leave, I was hoping he would get fired because he would be probably the next guy in line. But it doesn't
I
look like
agree.
that's gonna happen.
What I'm worried about for all of us, because we do like to kind of like plug and play. I think that Dan Quinn is all about that brotherhood. I don't think Mike McDaniels would even come here, unfortunately. I think it would be Brian Johnson. They'll take someone within the house and move them up here. I'm curious if Ken Norton Jr. I hope we go a different direction. Like they move him up to defensive coordinator because he is an experienced defensive coordinator. I want them to kind of use his network and to use the talent around the league to build up the coaching staff as opposed to kind of like self promotion. There's pros and cons, but the defense I think needs a complete overhaul.
I think that
yeah,
that's a knock for DQ basically. Like that's a good like what you're saying is exactly what concerns I think a lot of fans of like being too loyal.
Exactly.
Like everybody loves loyalty. I love loyalty, man. I'm a big loyal person, but being too loyal is a problem also. And I think when you talked about Bobby Wagner earlier, is he being too loyal to the players? Is he being too loyal to coaching staff? He has to make choices and big decisions, and it'll cost him his job and the rest of the staff their jobs if he doesn't look outside the box a little bit. So the brotherhood thing is cool when you're succeeding, but when you're not, you need to look for some other results outside the building.
George, Abdullah brought some photos with him, and I'm excited to see them.
Yeah, let's take a look real quick. Let's pull them up and see how they go.
Yeah, what do you guys think of the game? You guys have fun watching that game?
It actually was more entertaining than I thought it was going to be, to be honest with you.
It started off weird. And I'll say, like, just to start off the game, like, kind of like the angle where my gallery went. Initially it was kind of like, look, I'll be honest, the energy was weird. There wasn't a lot of people in the stadium at the beginning of the like when we're out there for warm-ups and stuff like that. Obviously a lot of people on the sideline, everybody's happy because it's Christmas, and you saw a lot of the Cowboys and Commanders players, coaches interacting with each other, talking to each other. There was a lot of good positive vibes, so I was kind of not sure how the energy was going to go, but it was a pretty hard-hitting, like pretty competitive game. The beginning of it kind of was looking a little ugly in that first couple quarters, but they kept fighting, and I think the biggest thing for me was seeing the young guys fighting. So basically in regards to this picture here, obviously I like seeing the fight that Mikey had. I can't remember what receiver this is, but basically it was an incomplete pass at the end of the day. And it was kind of like an epitome of what this game was. It was two teams that had nothing to truly play for, that don't like each other, that are rivals going at it, and fighting still. I mean, the one positive thing you can say about this Dan Quinn team, there's a lot of things that people want to knock them for. They are still playing hard. They're still fighting. They might not be having the best results. They're still playing. They're still fighting. There were some hard hits. It was still enjoyable for me to see. And that's kind of what this shows. Yeah, I mean, as you can see, they were going after. This was in the fourth quarter when you think people are going to just start chalking it up and looking forward to the next game and just trying to run out the clock. I mean, they were still getting active, and there still needs some help on the defensive side of the things. But my biggest thing that I love seeing was young players like Peyton Barber, like, Johnny Newton, McGee was all over the place. Some of these younger guys were really, really succeeding. And I think that's what I ideally would like to see in the next game here as well, is more of these younger guys, really chasing the ball, really trying to see what does this team have moving forward. I think it's like the biggest question.
That photo of Sanders show, the first one, George.
Yeah,
it was to me, he has proven himself to be a quality boundary corner, and if that's true, we talk about things that they found out this year, and like in a down year, if they found somebody that can be a quality starter opposite of Trey Amos, both of them under 25, to me, that's a huge deal.
Oh, huge. And I think we all kind of thought he would move back inside. I always thought he had a really good training camp inside. It just didn't really work out super well. But ever since he's played outside, that was mostly where his success was last year too. So him playing back outside again, maybe that's just where he needs to be. I think he's had an up and down year. I can't sit here and say that Mikey had an excellent year all year. There's been some tough plays, but for the most part, I do think that there's a lot of optimism at him being on the outside for next year for me. Here's another shot of Bill, who actually had an excellent game. I mean, I'm still a little hesitant about if Bill is the primary guy moving forward, but what we saw the last couple weeks have been pretty impressive for me. His runs against the Giants up in New York. This week I thought he ran excellent. I mean, he has breakaway ability, which we haven't seen with a running back on the squad for a while, and I don't think any other running back has that. He might not have the extreme power like you were talking about, George, right? But at the same time, you give him a hole, you give him an alley. I mean, he can hit it. Like he has the speed to break away and give you that big
George,
play.
you're excited for these to be the primary uniforms next year?
Absolutely. I think they're fantastic. They're gorgeous, especially on TV.
I'm not trying to when we get the photo, I'm so disappointed that we're not photographing them again this week. Like every time we got to photograph these as photographers, and I think everybody knows as fans, like it's just different. I mean, it hits different. They pop. I get excited. I mean, as I got to be a uniform nerd for what I do, right? But it's it's hard for them to not go with these. It would be really sad if they don't make this the primary situation. And it sounds like they're going to that in that direction.
And Burgundy sounds like they'll bring the Burgundy back too.
Yeah.
It's all about the accents. I feel like the jersey, it's funny, like standalone, the actual jersey is solid, right? But I think the stripes on the pants and the stripes on the helmet is really it just has that continuity and brings everything together. And I love it. Like, and in fact, the white pops because of the burgundy pants with the stripe. Everything just looks real fresh. And I love the matte. Like I hope they don't go back to the whole translucent shiny helmet, because I know a lot of people the old school people really want to go that route, but I think the stripe looks even more powerful on the mat. I think it's dope.
I think the mat is so good. Let me ask you guys. I mean, look, you guys have been fans for this team for a long time, and I'm kind of new to everything, being in DC for about 12 years. But the old school team used to always wear the white jerseys at home. Do you guys prefer that? Do you like the burgundy? Because I know when they were winning Super Bowls back in the 90s, they used to wear white. Is it something where you're excited to see the burgundies come back? If they were to have a burgundy version come back, is that something that you're more excited for?
I'm open for everything. For me, growing up, I always felt like white was always home. Even when I was playing high school football, home whites. It's kind of what I thought it was. It was always kind of odd for me that we wore the whites away for whatever reason. I kind of I guess I didn't really hear that they're going to go burgundy legacy jersey. I mean, that'd be cool if they went that direction with it. The only knock is that I didn't kind of like the current burgundies. I know it's kind of funny to say. Maybe I think that for continuity, they should probably keep it, all consistent with that classic font and all that. The only thing that I like on the new burgundies is the gold lettering. They have the gold font on the back on the gold.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. Imagine that with the gold pants, with a stripe on the gold pants. It looks sharp as hell, man. I think it'd be really cool. So that's kind of where I want to go with.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of a battle between the gold numbering and not. Some people want to go back. Some people would love it. I'm not sure. Doug, you got an opinion on it or no?
Well, I'll say this. I like the pants. This version of the pants way better than what we're using right now. Absolutely. I'm with you. The new jerseys have not been a problem for me personally. I don't mind them. I definitely hope they keep the black jerseys. I like the black jerseys, but to me, if they went back to this and the burgundy and were able to change the black a little bit so that they're using this burgundy lettering with the gold outline, I think would pop better than just that yellow that they're using now. In fact, I think for years, George, they used to have a black Sean Taylor jersey. Remember that it was this, but just in black. I used to love those things.
Well, these are
fine by me, but the idea that they didn't, I just think it's funny because the idea that they didn't do a lot of losing in these jerseys for the last 20 years makes me laugh because, yes, these are Super Bowl jerseys, but you got to be as old as I am to remember them. And I hate to say it, but ain't that many of us left. You know what I mean? The fan base is getting younger, George, and those folks that have watched these jerseys didn't see a lot of winning. So I think the outcry for these are funny, because I just think they did more winning in the New Jerseys last year than they did like the last decade.
Absolutely. And one thing that I've learned just watching across the entire NFL this year is that '90s look in general is just dope, man. Look at the Seahawks jersey, the Broncos, all of that stuff was fire. Seahawks, dude, they're all silly, dude.
They should require everybody to wear their throwbacks on the same day, right?
Like don't be
the Giants in our throwbacks. The Giants should have been wearing those sweet ass '90 throwbacks at the same time. I don't know why they don't. I don't know why they don't. Coincide that way.
I was annoyed when Denver showed up because we all thought Denver was going to be wearing their old school jerseys and they didn't, and we were like, why aren't you? And we've seen these games where both teams are. It looks great. Like even this week, I'm disappointed that the Eagles will be wearing their Kelly greens. It would have been nice if they had these jerseys to go pair with it, but they're going back to the old.
And this was not called either, right? This is a great photo, but this was not,
it wasn't. No, they did actually call it. They called it. It was funny because when I shot it, it took them forever to call it. And it was like, I remember Jeff Burke, who's one of the photographers, I think for Getty or for AP, but he basically was like, we saw the flag come in real late, and he was like, yo, like, the other guy didn't want to call it, I guess. But they did call it late. And this is probably my favorite picture of the game because this is the breakaway touchdown, making them look, kind of foolish. I was going to use this as like the opener. But I also, try to make sure it's more of like an even way of telling the story, especially since they lost the game. But it was, my favorite picture of the day, and it gives me optimism in regards to this team, or at least in regards to Bill specifically, because I think, just like we talked about Jaden on giving people time, I think people saw that they traded away B-Rob, and it's like, Bill, this is the Bill show, and it turned into more, running back by committee. Maybe this is the beginning of Bill really getting that confidence and that ability to learn how to read through blocks. Because if you look at that play, I mean, he was so fast through those blocks. But he ran it the perfect way, and I think he was struggling with that early on. I think he wanted to bounce things out a lot more, and I think he's learning how to read his blocks. And if you got a guy like that with that kind of speed and that kind of confidence to be able to actually read blocks and make the proper cuts, he could be really deadly, which is why I would love for him, like I said again, get in the offseason, get with some of these guys who've been doing it for a long time, learn from them as much as you can, because as much as I'm not sure he can be a number one, I think he has potential to be a number one.
This is a poster right here. You gotta love these two guys just falling on their face here. While John Bates is like, "Go get some, kid."
I mean, I can't stand Dallas, so like it, I like where I grew up. My friends, all of them were Dallas Cowboys fans. I couldn't stand them, so like for me, it's great seeing this. Anything that's showing guys just kind of on their face, face planning. I mean, it always is kind of beneficial. So definitely my favorite picture of this set for sure.
Absolutely.
George, before we get out of here, what are you looking for in this final game? Hoping more rookies play, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think hopefully we can see the players kind of develop a little bit more, kind of build upon what we have. I'd love to see Bill have another breakout game. Love to see Sinnott have a big breakout game. You do want to see Johnny Newton develop. You're kind of looking for who wants to be here and who wants to be, who's going to contribute next year is kind of what we're looking for. I'd love to see if maybe Washington should play some more younger players, right? It's going to be funny because I don't know if you guys caught it yet, but like it's so advantageous for the Eagles to get the number 2 seed. So they're going to be coming in hungry as hell going into this game. This is not going to be like at the beginning of the year, like, oh, the Eagles are going to rest their starters. It's going to be like us versus the backups. Like, no, it's a huge difference. Like I believe if the Eagles get the 2nd seed, they'll play the Packers in the 1st round, and then they'll have the next round. They'll also play at home. If they lose, they fall to the 3rd seed, and they're going to play either the Seahawks, the 49ers, or the Rams, which is horrible. And they're probably they could potentially be away for week 2. So it's a huge game for the Eagles. They're going to come correct, honestly.
No,
so
it's a big deal. The line was 7.5 to open, and I was like, oh, that's because they really want to win. It went up to like 8.5, I think. And yeah, like look, it makes me excited. I wasn't sure how excited I was gonna be to go to this game. I'll be at this game also. And like when I realized that, it makes me excited because look, now that we know that the Commanders can't, like, I think for those who want to tank the season, like, well, they win, they can't go further than 7. They're going to be in the top 7, so we know that. So, like, ultimately, for me, knowing that, go out and kick some kick some butt, man. Like, sorry, I'm about to curse. Go out there and play hard, man. Like, I mean, they're bringing it. You need to bring it. Let's see these two teams get after it. And it is exciting the fact that we're not going to see guys, playing meaningless ball. Like, there's something to play for here, and spoiler is one of those things. So, I'm excited. Hopefully, some of these younger players. I'm hoping for another Johnny Newton breakout game because they got a big, tough decision about Deron Payne next year. So if you have a guy like Johnny Newton in the fold that's playing well, you can go a different direction. I don't know, but there is some guys that you really hope kind of step up. Him and McGee. I love McGee, so hopefully he'll play. And he played at Temple in Philly, so he's used to that stadium. So we'll see what he can do.
All right, so I think, George, we'll take the rest of the week off since it's New Year's, and then we'll be back on Monday. Abdullah, if you want to come back Monday, if you're
down, man. I'll be here. Yeah. Let me know, man. Let me know.
All right. Fellows, awesome. Enjoy your New Year's, and maybe we'll talk resolutions on Monday.
Sounds good. All right, sounds good, brother.
All right. Thank you guys for having me. All right, peace.